Our speakers tonight are Sally Anne Sadler from Shooting Star Gardens and Kippy Irwin to talk about arborist wood chips. So let Kippy start.
Hi, thanks for being here. I'm Kippy Irwin, as I think I know all of you, most of you. I am a certified permaculture designer, although I don't do that professionally, but I do it actively within my life and my community. So, and I'm have a lot of heart behind that. Permaculture, which probably most of you have never heard of, is defined as the development of agricultural ecosystems intended to be sustainable and self-sufficient. Just a quick start is, as our city is becoming more and more developed, and as we are losing more and more of our trees, I cannot stress enough the value of us taking care of our landscapes. So using arborist wood chips is one way to do that. That's what brings me here to talk about this tonight. So what are arborist wood chips? They are freshly untreated wood chips that come from your local arborist. What isn't arborist wood chips is dyed and chemically treated wood chips, mulch, and beauty bark, wood chips with rubber and other products added, packaged wood chips, and playground wood chips. Now, playground wood chips are a very clean product that's generally cedar. The advantages and disadvantages is a playground chip you could find at your local nursery, which is great and convenient. You do pay for it, and it works great for places like playgrounds, but it's all fairly large pieces and they're about the same size pieces, and therefore they're much slower to break down. That makes a great thing for a playground, and yet for your landscape where you actually want your wood chips to be breaking down and creating a strong ecosystem within your landscape, arborist wood chips are much better for that. Why to use arborist wood chips? They are free, which is great. They retain moisture in your landscape, therefore lowering your water needs. So I can't stress how much of an asset they are in the middle of the summer for adding moisture to your landscape. They improve your soil significantly. They improve your drainage significantly, and they create a stronger ecosystem within your landscape. When to use arborist wood chips in your landscape? When your shrubs and trees are becoming more vulnerable to drought. So here in this area, you see these roadies that are survived for 50 years here just fine, and they're struggling now. So examples like that are a great place to add some wood chips underneath your roadies. The trees, a lot of our trees are struggling, and we need them. So that's a great place to use them. When you want a lower maintenance landscape, they definitely support that. They fairly quickly, like I can't believe how quickly actually, they improve your drainage where you don't have good drainage. So it's impressive. So I highly recommend it for that. Naturally decreasing weeds. They attract more pollinators because you're attracting stronger ecosystem, and therefore you have more pollinators in your landscape. You have an organic, if you want to have an organic and chemical-free landscape. And when you have manageable ants on your property. I'll use here as an example. When I started volunteering here, we had an ant problem. And for years, they had people come in and treat the ants. So they would put chemicals or put these little boxes to attract the ants and yada yada. And we also had a moisture problem. So I'm big on not using chemicals, especially we have lots of kids here. So I propose that we get wood chips and lay them out in the damp zones outside the building and see if that changed things. We do not have an ant problem anymore. We do not have a moisture problem anymore. It was all free. The wood chips were delivered for free. It was all volunteers to lay them. So again, if we're looking at here and ants are the problem, it's really ants actually are a gift because they're came to do a job. They came to help manage the water. So if you look at nature in that way and dance with it in that way, much more successful than killing them. Where to get arborist wood chips? So for those of you not familiar, there's a small community park on Ashworth called Harkness Park. It is not officially called Harkness Park, so you can't find it in Google's map. That's Harkness Park. But that's what the community has named it. It is run all by volunteers. And there's a large wood chip pile there for the community. So that's on Ashworth between North 125th and North 122nd. So please come and get as many wood chips as from there. We'll keep filling it up. You can contact a local arborist or tree trimming company and have them deliver wood chips. You can also sign up for Chip Drop, which I put the website here. With the last two, just to make note that you will get a large delivery. So you have to have a big project. Otherwise, you're going to be completely overwhelmed. If you were just going to lay a little bit, it's not what you want. And therefore, the park is a great way to fill up the back of your car. But for a large delivery, if you want to, lay them all over your landscape and switch out some of your grass, it's a great way to do it. And again, it's free, or most of the time it's free. I'll go back on that. Like Chip Drop, it's free, but you can offer a tip. Basics on where to use arborist wood chips. So in a mature landscape, you can use them where there's exposed soil or where you would normally put bark, beauty bark, or mulch. To replace grass and more weedy areas, other than the fact that you have to gather a bunch of cardboard, and once you gather a bunch of cardboard, you need to gather like 3 times more. Like you need a lot of cardboard. But other than that, if you get a Chip Drop delivery and you have a grass front yard that you want to change into a landscape that's patches and paths of wood chips, it doesn't cost you anything. You just need to gather the cardboard, and that's a job. I recommend getting it at places like there's a cash and carry over on Stone Way. I just go shopping in there. I say, can I pick up your cardboard? And I literally take my cart and taped all the cardboard off the shelf from empty boxes. And there's generally, you do that a couple times. And I know some people who ordered like thicker paper that comes in big rolls. So you can do that. What is it?
Ramboard.
Thank you, Ramboard. So the beauty of that is you don't have exposed edges. With the cardboard, you really need to make sure that you overlap really well if you're going to do a grassy area, because grass is tough. Yes. But again, because it's a very organic design, if you have a place that grass comes up, well, you move the wood chips and you put another box of cardboard down and voila, keep going. So that's lovely too. So anyway, overlap cardboard, and I really mean overlapped. Then you top it with 2 inches of wood chips. You might do mounds in certain areas where you do more that you plant in. Yeah, you can do even 5 inches or
It breaks down.
It does, and it becomes actually beautiful soil very quickly, really. So I've actually done landscapes where I've done mounds for the patches and paths I've just kept lower. And I have not used any soil. I planted plants, like native plants in the wood chips, and it didn't cost me anything other than the plant. But that's it. You do not turn the soil. You do not weed. You just cover it and keep going. If you have things like ivy, that's a trickier slope. So anyhow, but in general, a grassy patch or weedy patch, that's how to do it. In a planter box. So if you're putting a new planter box, you can actually fill them halfway up with wood chips and then halfway with soil. So you don't have to buy so much soil. It works. I've done it. Your veggies are happy. How do arborist wood chips improve your landscape? They build healthier soil by putting worms, insects, other microorganisms, and fungi to work. So it's like this team that's working 24 hours in your yard, and they do an amazing job. It manages and retains water in a more efficient and effective manner by holding water on your landscape for as long as possible in a healthy way. The idea is, I know when you think of like holding water on your property, and people are like, oh, you don't want water to stay on the property, but really you do. You just need it to be healthy. So as long as it's being held in your soil in a healthy way, you want it to stay as long as you can, and wood chips are a tremendous way to help that. And then you water less and your plants are happy. Improve the drainage with both compact and poor drainage zones by, again, putting nature to work to improve the soil. When I moved on to my property, I couldn't dig anywhere on the property. Like it was a serious job. And I'm there 10 years now, but I would say 2 years in, less than 2 years in, I could dig 2 feet. No problem. Like it's amazing how quickly it improves your soil. So, and now I can dig deeper than that. We had to have a plumbing project done and I dug it all and it wasn't even hard. So, hey, and I had the plumber do the rest, but that was great. Saved money, I'll tell you. It creates a stronger ecosystem within your landscape. A precaution. So avoid laying wood chips against wood, such as fencing and siding. I still have it against my house, but not touching any wood siding. You know, at least a 1-inch gap. Avoid piling wood chips against the shrubs and trees. Shrubs and trees love them, but you don't want to put a big pile right against the trunk. Wood chips over 3 inches thick. So some people say, well, having wood chips in your landscape becomes a fire hazard. And you know, the more we're talking about, and I don't think that's true at all. Like to me, my landscape is way healthier, and like I almost want to be like, I don't think fire would touch. You know, like the chips are damp very close to the surface. Some would argue if you have it really thick in a really dry area, maybe. But as Sally looking at me, that's how I feel too. I've mounted it way, like I've done hills with it and it's not.
Drought stressed plants are a fire hazard.
Exactly, and this minimizes that, so yes. And then in the Pacific Northwest, we have mushrooms. They're very common in our landscapes, all landscapes, so they do grow in wood chips. And some people think that's really cool and they're like, wow, look at all these mushrooms, and they get really into it. And some people probably get pretty freaked out about it. So just so you understand, they do grow. Most of them come and go in a really short amount of time, so they'll rise and fall in a couple days. But just to make note, they do happen. Nitrogen and wood chips. So some are concerned that wood chips remove nitrogen from the soil. When using arborist wood chips, the ecosystem it creates gives more to the soil than it takes. So if you use wood chips that have chemicals and have dyes, you basically remove the potential of an ecosystem. And once you do that, it's going to drain your soil of nitrogen because they have to break down. But if you have your team in there working, they're pooping and it is not, nitrogen is not a problem in my experience. Sally, do you have that experience?
I can talk a little bit about it if you want, but just real quick, the whole nitrogen thing was wood chips, not arborist chips. And arborist chips, it's a good mix of browns and greens and the fungi that grow in it. So the latest research at the Center for Urban Horticulture is that no, you don't have a net loss of nitrogen.
Okay.
I still don't recommend using them in a vegetable garden thickly, but I want to use something that's going to break down more quickly for a veggie garden in particular, but for pathways and new beds, 100%.
Yeah. Okay. And I have used them in garden beds and they do work, but anyway, they do work for that. And
this is more of a preference than anything.
Yeah. Thank you, so a wrap up is wood chips are wonderful to have in your landscape. They generally look beautiful, they smell great, and they create a really happy yard. So please consider using them. Here's a picture of our wood chips at Park. There's plenty there. Try them out in a little spot, see what you think. And they're just really amazing to have. I think they make the air breath better and all. So anyway, thank you very much for listening. Does anybody have questions? Yeah. Hey.
So first a comment, Harkness Park is in Google Maps.
Oh, absolutely.
Another question, so when do you use compost as opposed to wood chips in your yard?
Well, you could use compost in your garden box.
Right.
So
But
for your
talking
veggies.
about amending your soil with compost, does the wood chips just basically do that, so you don't need to buy compost?
I would say that within your, like where your shrubs are and trees, I actually think that the wood chips create a pretty beautiful, a pretty beautiful soil that is highly nutrient. So I would say if you're gonna add compost, it would be to your veggie garden for a little extra. But I think on your landscape in general, they do a fabulous job. Yes.
So in the pea patch, we use the wood chips on pads, but we put compost in the vegetable beds
Right.
because.
Yeah.
The chips really aren't great. for
Especially,
vegetable.
vegetable bed, it's like it turned into a
Yeah.
stuff.
Right.
And again, when I said use them in the garden bed, I meant like as a lower layer, and then you would do your soil, your compost on top. So if you did use them in your garden bed, that's how I would do it. I wouldn't put them like a heavy load on your veggie garden. Yeah.
But also I wanted to make a
Thank you.
comment.
Yeah.
Chips are not all the same, you know,
Yeah.
they chop up a different kind of tree, sometimes they chop way more twigs,
Yeah.
way more leaves. Sometimes.
One of them are
branch-
monkey puzzle trees.
Yeah.
Yeah. Way. So,
Yeah.
and you often don't have control over what you get.
It is true. But I've gotten tons of deliveries, and I found generally a lot of times you get a mixed lot, or, you know, that it's still all in the end, that's pretty good. Yeah. Randy?
Yeah, how much do you use in a season personally?
It depends on the year, but,
You get an order, or lay it out, several times a year?
no, but I could get an order every year. Do I get one every year? Not always. But then I get them from Harkins Park and just, you'll see me with my wheelbarrow going back and forth.
Kind of
So-
hard to tell from that picture. I don't know what, that could be 3 yards right there, something. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, it go down now, it's even bigger than that. It's a big, there's tons there now. So
That's a hard.
I challenge how I like to use widgets. Come on.
How do you
Let's
get
do
it
it.
from there to your place?
I use a wheelbarrow.
Come again?
I use a wheelbarrow. It's a good workout. It's fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
No team, never. I've seen people use, I've seen
6
people,
blocks away, that's a good workout for you.
yeah, I've seen people build their green waste bins and you're at home.
I've
I've seen,
that.
yeah, I've seen people fill the back of their trunk, back of their pickup, you know. Find a way. Okay.
Good done.
Yeah, other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, where did they come from? Who provides the chips and like?
Oh.
Development.
Yeah, I think, well, yeah, I think mainly it comes from Ballard trees. So Ballard Tree Service drops them. So they're close, so when they need, you know, it's much better for them to drop it somewhere than to pay a tipping fee, obviously, if they needed to drop a load, and they probably, do arborists, wood chips, do arborists actually take it to the dumping?
They used to,
I know. I hope they don't, I hope they have enough
do
resources
if-
now.
They do if there's like a significant disease problem or whatever. But generally speaking, they dump down at Magnuson Park, there's a
Okay.
big dump site.
Yeah,
And then now, because people are more savvy about wood chips, at the dirt exchange, they'll take them.
yeah,
And
great,
sometimes Pacific Topsoil will take them.
okay.
That's the short behind the cemetery, right?
Oh.
Pacific Topsoil, yeah,
Right.
that's
No, right
Pacific
in the
Top-
cemeteries,
Pacific
where there's just a
Topsoil
huge
is
mound?
there.
No,
No.
oh,
No, it's a
I'm
business,
sorry,
it's a
yeah,
business.
yeah,
Um,
that. There's another huge mound that's on 125th, right across from Lowe's, that's also behind the cemetery.
Oh,
beside
I
the-
don't know.
So, but that's like,
That's fantastic.
no, so that, I asked them, so
If
that's actually,
it's for the big cemetery.
it's the cemetery's property.
uh,
And they rented it to Arborist, but when they had the huge wood mound, I was like, come on, guys, like, that's not that good for the environment and for all those trees there.
Well, if
So,
they have,
from a
like-
pest perspective,
I've looked on chip drop and I've had 35 chip drops.
yeah, I'm like,
And
yeah,
I'm mostly for client,
okay,
but yeah, and there are, there are good arborists who keep their tools sharp, and then there are bad arborists
Yeah.
where you'll get these long swaths of cedar and things like
Yeah.
that. So you
yeah.
have to go through it. So
Yeah.
it's nice to have a place like that.
Yeah, and there is all sorts of variety there. And also the cool thing is depending on what you're doing, you know, some of it's been there a while, so it's more broke down.
Yeah.
So in places where you actually want it more soily,
Yeah.
there's that, and then there's the newer ones that are much more chippy for the paths and such, so you can pick and choose there. Yeah. So questions? I'm gonna turn it over to Sally. Thank you so much, y'all.
I own Shooting Star Gardens. I started as a naturalist when I was born. I was born, and then I discovered the natural world. All of us are born curious, and it's beaten out of us. and I figured out how to make a job out of my curiosity that wasn't beaten out of me. I was raised feral, mountains next to Kippy's, and that's how I became a gardener. I could have been a marine biologist. I could have been a birder. I could have been any number of things. And finding native plants and pushing the landscape aesthetic from creating a sculpture into native plants and how to create an ecosystem, an ecology that will support itself and support native pollinators became a passion of mine. So I want to say thank you so much for Annalie and Catherine, who both work for Shooting Star Gardens. And Catherine has been here for 750,000 years. And Annalie, I think, is coming on their 4th year. Is that right? You could have gotten a college degree. You could have done something useful. Okay, so that's kind of my background and where I'm coming from. I worked in the nonprofit sector. I run my business very mission, vision, value, goals oriented, and I want to connect people to the natural world, and I do not want super tidy landscapes that are perfect in every way and static. I'm not interested in that. That is not what's going to support our pollinators, and pollinators are what we need in order to have, people. So what is a native plant? The time frame is the plants post-colonial are not native. So the time frame is what happened before 1492. I want to talk just a real quick minute indigenous cultivation. I met this woman in Canada, Lee Joseph. She ended up now we're getting
Party.
She did her PhD in ethnobotany. She's a Squamish person up north of Vancouver in Squamish lands, and she edited Pojar. I'm going to refer to one of the first books that ruined my life or changed the course, or everybody just calls this Pojar. In fact, I didn't even know the real title until I just read it. Plants of coastal British Columbia, including Washington, Oregon, and Alaska, which gives me hope that maybe they'll come down and just take us. That would be good. So this is a field guide, but it has these little ethnobotanical notes. And in an earlier edition, they'd say things like, the Lummi did this, and the Squamish did this, and the whatever did this. And she basically went through, and she didn't do a full ethnobotanical change. She just changed the tenses. These people still exist. They've been cultivating these plants that were wild and managed and traded and harvested and planted for thousands of years. And I didn't know that, and I should have known that a lot longer ago than I did. So that changed my view. Cultural significance, these plants form the foundation for the Pacific Northwest culture. The ecological niche, people talk about, native plants are adapted here. They're not adapted to climate change that is rapidly changing how we need to think about landscapes, and they're not necessarily adapted to an urban environment. So the plants that I'm going to talk about, if I ever get to that part and stop waxing on philosophical, are plants that are well adapted to climate change and urban environments. So this is a managed camas field in Mima Mounds in near Olympia, Washington. And nobody knows how the Mima Mounds were made. Everybody who says they know is lying. The people who lived here for thousands of years, they don't know how it happened, and the geologists don't know. But it has been managed by I think the Puyallup people for centuries for camas, which is the second most important calorie crop for lowland native folks, which I didn't know until recently. And ain't it pretty? I just also want to acknowledge all of the people who came before me and their long stewardship of this land, because it truly has informed how I understand my work and how I deal with these plants and how I manage these plants. Okay, urban ecology, big shift. We have a ecological gardening is looking at how nature works and in an aesthetic way. How can I create a landscape in your urban lot that will do the ecological work that needs to be done? So I'm trying to create a functional ecosystem for biodiversity to support pollinators that will connect you to especially you, Julie, to the natural world and bring you joy. I'm just going to jump into favorites. So it's already dark and miserable outside. As you leave the parking lot, look to the right. There's a beautiful red flowering currant, and I mean, like it is. And I just want to say, I planted that 11 years ago, and this is on a personal note. This is where I found out that my mom had a stroke, and she died. I was there. We were planting these things, and I found my niece called me, and I went home, and so this actual location was when I was first starting out. I didn't have 2 pennies to rub together, and I planted a whole bunch of bare root plants that are still kicking around. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew that it was a shift in how I was looking at horticulture.
You did a good job.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Bridie sanguineum, red flowering currant. I am not going to bog you down with the Latin unless you want them. They are edible berries. They are horrible. They taste absolutely terrible. I mean, unless you like old sock. But we also have some other native currants here. And one of them is called a stinky currant. Now it smells terrible, but tastes nice. And it has a flower that looks like a clown car. So what's fun about this plant? Well, other than the fact that it tastes truly awful, it's an early pollinator. Birds do eat the fruit later on, but it's a really early emergent pollinator for hummingbirds and early bumblebees in particular, and our mason bees. Who knows what mason bees are? Okay, so real quick, they're the early guys that make it so you can have apples. I really made that easy. Oh, and they also attract hummingbirds, and who doesn't like those? Oregon grape. So these are common plants that are available everywhere from Home Depot. Do not shop at Home Depot. And I have a list of resources and a bibliography, and I brought a bunch of books, and I'm here all night. I'm not here all night. But Mahonia, I mean, this color happens in February in Washington State. And so there's some really, really early emergent flies, safford flies, that come out, and this is their jam. Edible berries, and they're not horrible. They're not good, but I'm not the audience for that. But the Salish people did made Mahonia berry jams and preserves, and it's a great vitamin C source for during the leaner times of year. And I am not an ethnobotanist. I'm a ethnobotanist wannabe. Late winter blooming supports our early plants, and also just because it looks like a holly, it's not a holly, and don't hate it because it looks like a holly. And that's what it said right there when I was talking to it. It said, please don't hate me because I look like holly. Yeah. That is exactly what it said. I can't make this shit up, man. Okay, evergreen huckleberry. Probably most of you are familiar with evergreen huckleberry. And there's another plant called Oregon boxwood. And both those plants make me wonder, why are we struggling with all the stupid boxwoods that get diseases, have no nectar in their flowers and are constant and don't give you huckleberries. The huckleberries are edible and they're delicious. And the interesting thing about this, the little fun fact, is it protects larvae, not just which provides breakfast for all the new baby birds. So all of those little caterpillars and things like that. So it's a host plant for and protection for that. But it also produces delicious berries, and only certain kinds of native bees can pollinate that, not European honeybees. So it's a great substitute for boxwood. And actually, I had a client on Capitol Hill that had a formal evergreen huckleberry hedge. It was like sheared. So Fringe cup. This is popping up all over. Like if you've ever been to Paramount Open Space or your little park here, North Acres, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
You'll see that coming up. It's just starting to think about blooming right now. And I love all the things in the saxifrage genus. And there's a little picture of an evil looking bee that's a saffron fly. It's a hover fly, and that's the guy that pollinates the fringe cup. Also some small native bees and little teeny tiny, there's a fungus fly, which sounds bad because it has a branding issue. And it also pollinates wild ginger, which isn't a ginger and it's not wild, but it is. I guess it is wild. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny fly. And my goal for all of you is to notice the small. So I wanted to say, doesn't that fly look scary? It's not scary. It doesn't. I'm a hoverfly. It doesn't. And look at this guy. This is a woefully underappreciated kind of fly that looks like a bumblebee, and on a woefully underappreciated white yarrow, the native white yarrow. It supports parasitic wasps, which sounds bad. Like, see, again, marketing. We've got to on the marketing for the native plants and the native pollinators. So who's heard of a keystone plant? Who has read or heard of Douglas Palmy? He talks about keystone plants, the plants that you really need to have in order to support. And he talks about the oak is the #1 plant in America. We have one species of oak, and it hasn't lived naturally north of Olympia for 17,000 years, although it was traded. But it isn't the oak here. For here, it's the cedar. Cedar supports more variety of plants than pollinators than any other plant. Not all of us have room to put another cedar, and climate change is killing a lot of our large trees. But you know what? If we can have a cedar for 100 years or 50 years or 10 years, you're still going to support a lot of pollinators. And they're beautiful. But if you don't have the space for it, there are some other plants that you can choose from. But a keystone plant is the plant that is really important to the whole food web. It's like, you can't have whales without krill. Kill the krill, etc. So yarrow supports, what was it? It was over 300 or 100 different local pollinators and 300 statewide. It has tiny little flowers. It does a ton of work. And this is another fly that's pretending to be a bee. This is a different picture of yarrow because, did I tell you how important yarrow is? I don't know if you got it though.
It's great for compost too.
I think it's quite lovely. And there's little teeny tiny short yarrow and there's big yarrow. It's a pollinator magnet. Name a pollinator and it wants to be there. And the cool thing about it is, you know how everybody says, oh, you got to plant milkweed for monarchs. We don't have monarchs in Western Washington. I mean, one will fly by and it's just like it just didn't have Google Maps. or it was down, or whatever. So you have a handful. We have them in Eastern Washington. We don't have them here. So I don't really care about that specific kind of milkweed. I do care about milkweed and other plants that are going to support the jillions of other butterflies that are under incredible pressure and huge decline. And this is, I think, the Western swallowtail. So this is just some of the things that yarrow does. Well, yarrow, if you want an adaptable plant, yarrow is for you. It's drought resistant. It thrives from sea to shining mountain range. I made that up earlier today. Yarrow, all from yarrow. Coastal strawberry. Now, I call this a tasty mulch. There's two different kinds. We have woodland strawberry and coastal strawberry. And this one, if you're not careful, it will be what you have. But if you want to get rid of a lawn, you can literally throw a handful of them down and swing by my house and grab them. I mean, seriously. And it will create a very healthy protection for your soil and attracts early mason bees. And also, if you're lucky, you get little strawberries. So tasty mulch. These are under the category of totally underappreciated native plants. Goldenrod and asters, they're great for late season food. They're nectar sources until they've laid their eggs, whatever little critter it is, and then they're gonna go to the sweet hereafter or another part of the carbon cycle. And these two plants support over 100 species of caterpillars. And if you don't have caterpillars, you don't have chickadees. If you don't have chickadees, you do not know what you're missing. And there's a dozen specialist bees that these guys support too. Wildlife habitat. So, they say leave the leaves. Well, I want you to leave the leaves, and I want you to leave the stems, and I want you to have at least part of your garden that's not ivy. I am asking you to spend some of your resources to convert some of your lawn into a pollinator pathway, a little resting spot. You need lots of little bits to support diversity. And if you want us to do it, we will do it. But if you want to learn how to do it, we will teach you. So back to Keystone, part of that food web. If you don't have these, you don't have that. If you don't have that, you don't have this. If you don't have these pollinators, you don't have, food. And by the way, people think that asters and goldenrods, especially goldenrod, causes allergies. And I mean, you might be allergic to anything, but people confuse it with sneezeweed, which is a Midwestern plant. We don't have it here. And that is highly, a lot of people get hay fever around that. But goldenrod, it's late season then, but you have to be careful. I'm just letting you guys know that both of these plants, Douglas aster and goldenrod, they're kind of like, invasive a bit. They're aggressive. They can be so, but if you've got the space for it, for instance, I was thinking about like that, the back 40 and an edge of your garden that you're not worried about, or between a rock and a hard place. Excellent choice. Full sun, no water. Love it. They're happiest plants. You've sheet mulched your garden. You go out and put in some babies, and then you're good. You're going to have purple, blue, and yellow forever. But if you want to have a fussy garden, that is not for you. Some directional change in how I've thought about landscape design is around creating the ecological space to support pollinator plants, to increase the interaction between the homeowner, or what I like to think of as the temporary steward of this one little tiny piece of land on this one little spin that you have on this beautiful blue planet. I'm not a purist. I do not need you to go out to Krugerberg Gardens and have 100% native landscape. I want you to have that peony that your mom had. I want you to have that joy. I want a garden to support you, connect you to the natural world, and native plants can connect you in a, I think, a richer way. But you don't have room for a Gary oak tree because a Gary oak tree wants to take up the space of this community center. In 100 years, but still, it's a commitment. And even like the red twig dogwood, you might do better with having a nativar. A nativar is a cultivar of a native plant that might be chosen because it's smaller or a different color or something like that. And this is an example, like red twig dogwood, the red Osher dogwood, it can get to be about 15 feet tall and about 10 feet wide or 20 feet wide, given if it's happy. So most people might not have that space, but it really does provide a long-lasting flower nectar source. And I mean, look at the color. It varies from this kind of color to the native is all red, but that's spectacular. But this one only gets to be about 5 or 6 feet tall, and you can cut down the canes. So I'm not anti-nativar. These cultivars that are either hybrid or clones. And I can go into the whole philosophy of that, but I'm not going to do that. But what's the biggest ecological bang for your buck? I want you to choose those plants when you can. That doesn't mean that I'm going to have you get rid of your mother's peony. Climate adapted plants. So when I'm looking at a landscape, I want to have as much biodiversity. So I might choose some smaller nativars, cultivars of native plants. In order to have that biodiversity, I want them to be climate adapted. I want to use sheet mulching techniques, etc., to keep the water, to retain moisture. I want to save water in cisterns. I want to use a rain garden, etc. So that's all climate adaptive thinking before you plan a garden. And I really, really want you to love it. I really want you to connect to it. That's the end of my TED Talk, and thank you. But here's some resources, and if anybody wants to have a copy of this deck, I have a card there, and I can email it to you, and you can have all of these resources. These are where, I just want you to know, I did not find this information from Bob's Pretty Good. I'm a native plant gardener or a wellness influencer on the internet. So the UW Herbarium is an incredibly good source, Washington Native Plant Society. And Krugerberg, I met him when I was a child of 30 and was gifted the first edition of his Gardening with Native Plants and found a little oak bush shrub called Sadler's Oak, which is my last name. It was not named after me. But I'm like, wait, native plants in a landscape? That's cool. He changed my life. If you haven't been to Krugerberg's Botanical Garden in Shoreline, what the hell are you doing with your life? I mean, you have got to think about your life choices, and I will come and get you. It is like somebody who walks in and says, I'm going to plant a sequoia here because climate's changing. And I'm only going to be living until I'm 90. So I'm thinking ahead 2,000 years. I mean, the man was a genius.
It's now a Shoreline Park.
Yeah, Shoreline. They gifted it to Shoreline, and Shoreline manages it. And I'm a consultant. Anyway,
I
yes,
think they're having their sale this weekend.
I believe they are. It was last weekend. Yes, it was last Saturday and Sunday, but you should get on their mailing list, and it's not a very busy mailing list, but their plant sales are wonderful. Okay, and here is a bibliography. It includes these books as well as one that I forgot to bring. And my name is Sally Anne Sadler. I own Shooting Star Gardens. It is my honor to help lead this incredible group where we change to planet one teeny tiny garden at a time. And thank you so much for your time. Anybody have any questions?
I have a question. This
Yes.
is really important. Is the shooting star a native plant?
Yes,
I hope so.
it is. In fact,
What
there's
is it related to?
it is, oh, this is crushing. This is crushing. It used to be Dodecathion jefferi, Dodecathion hendersonia. Dodecathion, it was a great word. It wasn't even Latin. And it means 12-sided. And it was just such a great name. And now it's primrose. I mean, primula. Do I look like somebody who would choose primula as their, like, you know, talisman? No, I don't. I'm not. So, you know, ever since we started like looking at genes, this is the native Hendersonii, Dodecathion Hendersonia. I refuse to use primula. I did to whatever. Anyway, but there's some growing at Paramount Park. They're just starting to come out, the leaves at Paramount Open Space. And you have erythronium growing at your North Acres, and they're starting to bloom right now. So if you want to see some really cool, the word ephemeral means the same thing with plants as it does with actually humanity. It's ephemeral. We're here and then we're not. They completely disappear after they bloom. Their leaves are gone. You think, oh my God, it's dead. It's not dead. It's just, that's all it does. It comes, it blooms, it says, I am here, and then it goes away. But it's not dead. They're perennial. Yes. Kippy.
Can you give us a recommendation of where you found these from?
As a matter of fact, I think that there is one of these links, the Native Plant Finder. It'll give you all of the local nurseries you put in your zip code. Okay. And but where I get native plants is Go Native. It's this guy named Don. He started it 100 years ago. It's in Shoreline, like kitty corner to Krugerberg Gardens. So when you're visiting the gardens, have I mentioned that you guys are going to visit the gardens? Then you can go and pick up your very own. And it's in his front yard of his house, and it's just jam-packed. It's amazing. So that's a really good local source. And then the nurseries are kind of starting to get with the program, but they will only have what's blooming and pretty today. They're not going to have, oh, I swear to God, this is worth $20. I know it looks like a pot of dirt. So, that's the problem with retail nurseries. So you only have what's going to happen that very minute. Don is a retail nursery, but he has year-round stuff. And he's also strictly native. So those are, Swanson's and Sky have native sections and things like that. But we get our plants from a variety of sources, including King Conservation District. If you want to do a total renovation, that's a very inexpensive way to go about it. But then there's specialty native nurseries that have a lot of the interesting, funky stuff. We're starting this program called Garden in a Box, where I will hand you a box of about 45 plants, around 15 varieties of plants, and it's all the biggest bang for your buck for a small design, and it comes pre-designed. It's sold out this year. Don't get too excited. But we're going to do it in the fall. We're going to have a rain garden one, and we'll have a shade one, and we'll have another sunny one. And it's a very inexpensive way to get a ton of plants, bare root, ready to go. You sheet mulch this year, and then it'll be ready to plant right through in the fall or the spring. This is not something that I would do if I was trying to grow a business, but it is going to fulfill the mission of Shooting Star Gardens to create these little pollinating pots. Anyway, I'm hoping that we'll be able to someday break even on it as far as that piece goes. But if it can connect people with DIY, with an inexpensive garden that's ready to go, then that's something that I'm interested in doing. And it's super exciting because that's what I started with. I went to England and I was reading all these books. I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the Garden in a Box. And so I read all the books, figured out what's not going to be totally uproot in your garden. and narrowed it down, and then sourcing these plants all over Western Washington, that has been a job. Because Oxbow Farm is a great source for native plants. They had a huge flood, and they lost a lot during in Duval, and it flooded. Okay, any other questions?
What's their name?
Oxbow.
That explains the flood.
That does explain the flood. I know, there's a little part of me that's just like, it's a floodplain. But they do a really good job. Can I tell you one last fun fact, please? So, if I marry Sally, which would be confusing because her name is Sally, and we have a baby, the genetic diversity increases because she's contributing, I'm contributing. Never mind the fact that we're both females, but we're just gonna set that aside. Because that's not really the point. The point is that we're going to share our genetic material, and then that next generation will mutate, however it's going to mutate, and share, have that sort of hybrid vigor, because that's how evolution works. If you believe in crazy things like science. So most plants in cultivation are clones, and that's problematic. Oxbow, bless their hearts, they grow everything from seed. So you buy an evergreen huckleberry and it's this big, and it took them 2 years to grow it, and you're like, oh my God, I'm paying $8 for a little tiny plug or whatever. But they have the natural biodiversity because they're growing everything from seed, which is amazing and unique as far as I know. It's not efficient because I can make 15 cuttings and give you 900 evergreen huckleberries, and it took me 2 minutes. And I'm not saying that's 100% bad. It's much better than choosing other options on the continuum. But Oxbow is run as a nonprofit, and the variety of native plants is astounding. They do mostly restoration. They grow plants for restoration as well as small nurseries and stuff. But they really are great to support. If you want to have a nice Sunday drive out to Duval. What other questions? Otherwise, I will get off my soapbox.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.